This morning's scripture reading will come from Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 through 12. Two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. For if either of them falls, the one will lift up his companion. But woe to the one who falls when there is not another to lift him up. Furthermore, if two lie down together, they keep warm. But how can one be warm alone? And if one can overpower him who is alone, two can resist. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly torn apart.
It's good to see you here this morning. It's always good to come together as the family of God. There is a little blind snail called a pinna that has a host of enemies. And all kinds of creatures are lurking about who would just love to eat this little snail, or maybe steal his shell, and he can't even see them coming. One of the worst enemies the pinna has is called the cuttlefish. No sooner does the pinna open up the valves in its shell and puts its head out, but that the cuttlefish will dash in and set up home right there inside his shell. But the problem is, the shell's not big enough for both of them. And so the poor little pinna snail is left hanging out the window, so to speak, while the cuttlefish lives inside. And he's left out there for any sea creature that comes along wanting a little escargot, right? For them to have and to eat. Fortunately, though, for the little snail, he has a little friend. A tiny crab animal that has very keen eyesight. And this little crab is the constant companion of the pinna. And so, when the time comes for them to get something to eat, he'll open up his shell and the little crab will run out. And if he sees any enemies, he immediately runs back in and he shuts the shell up. But if he doesn't see any enemies, then the little crab will go out, he'll gather up food, he'll come back to the opening of the shell, he'll scratch on it, and it'll open, and he'll go in and he'll share what he brought to eat with the snail. And they live like that, together, taking care of one another. The animal kingdom, if you remember your biology classes, the animal kingdom calls this symbiosis, right? In human circles, we call that kind of mutual assistance friendship. In many ways, just like the little snail and his crabby little friend, we depend upon those who are our friends, sometimes for our very lives. The Bible has some things to say about friendship, and that's what I want us to consider for just a few moments this morning. First, it says that true friends, well, they're just indispensable. That's what was read just a moment ago in Ezekiel chapter 4 and verses 9, or Ecclesiastes rather, chapter 4 and verses 9 through 12, when he talks about the two are better than one. Talks about how that a rope is better because it has multiple strands, right? Not just one. One strand's easy to break. Multiple strands are much harder to break. Many human sayings reflect the sentiments of that text that was read. It is said sometimes, no man is an island. That two heads are better than one. Jewish rabbis used to say, hand cleanses hand, finger cleanses finger. And then they would end that with either friendship or death. As important as friends and friendship are, though, from time to time, I meet people who have no friends. And that kind of situation really hurts when it happens among friends. It is probably typical human nature to withdraw from close relationships when such things happen. When people are hurt by their friends, when people are betrayed by their friends, they tend to want to withdraw. They kind of fall back into the old saying, burn me once, your fault, burn me twice, my fault, right? And I'm not going to let it be my fault. and so I will never get close to anyone again. It isn't difficult to understand why a person might have that kind of attitude. And while we understand that, to try to make it alone in this world is truly a difficult, it is a perilous road. Sometimes, too, we just outlive our best friends. And we find it difficult to start over making new ones after having friends for many, many decades. The simple truth is, no matter what we have suffered, and maybe even because we have suffered, we need friends. Solomon told us why this is true when he stated, more can be accomplished when two work together. Try to hang wallpaper by yourself. Do that. I hate hanging wallpaper. I'd rather paint. But try hanging wallpaper by yourself, or try moving something very heavy. I had about an 800-pound safe, and I was determined to move that thing from one end of the hall to the other end of the hall, and I did it. Paid for it for days. It hurt for days after doing it. But I did it by myself. Sure would have been nice to have another pair of feet and hands pushing on that thing. And if you try to do that wallpaper by yourself, good luck getting it straight. It's probably not going to look all that great, and you're going to end up having to redo it again anyway. It's just hard to do some things by yourself. Friendship is indispensable because of what we give to each other, what we provide, how we take the load off of each other. It's also indispensable because of mutual encouragement. Solomon says, woe to the one who falls when there is not another to lift him up. Yet a person can go it alone for a while. And you can even go it alone for a while and everything goes just fine. But there's going to come a day when you fall. And will anybody be there to help you? Will anybody be there reaching out a hand to raise you up? To give you strength? Yes, you can make it a while. But life is filled with falls and trips. There was a man who made wilderness trips into British Columbia alone, and people continuously warned him, don't do that. Don't go out into the wilderness by yourself. If you get hurt, if you get, in some particular way where you can't walk back out, you can't get to your canoe and paddle back out, if something happens to you, no one's going to know. No one's going to know you're missing. No one's going to know that you're hurt, and it may be weeks and months, and you probably will be dead. It's very dangerous to go into the wilderness alone without someone with you. Of course, even more dangerous than that is when a person decides to be a spiritual lone ranger. He or she keeps to themselves. They go the hermit route. And Satan just loves these people because they're out there all alone. They're like, Peter says that Satan's like a lion. And if you've ever watched the shows on television about the lions hunting in Africa, right? They are not running for the zebras or the wildebeest that are in the middle of the herd. They're looking for that one that's wandered off out here by itself, right? With no protection. And that's the one they gang up on. That's the one they kill. And that's how we put ourselves if we decide to be spiritual lone rangers. Another thing that makes friendship indispensable is what could be called greater comfort and warmth. Solomon says, if two lie down together, they keep warm. But how can one be warm alone? Those who have been separated from their spouses in death know about this one in a very real way. Life without a lifelong spouse is very difficult to experience. I remember Brother Bobby Key. I was never blessed to know Yvonne, his wife. They had been married for many, many years, 60 or 70 years. I can't remember the exact number. Bobby had been the preacher at Miami for 50 years before I came there. But even before marriage, Bobby walked Yvonne to school when they were 5 and 6 years old. And they lived an entire life together. From childhood all the way through their older years. And he missed her so very much. He would go out to the cemetery and eat a sandwich at her grave, just to be near as he could be to something that represented her. And so we know that pain. A poem was once written that says, "Make new friends, but keep the old. Those are silver, these are gold. New-made friendships, like new wine, age and mellow and refine. Friendships that have stood the test of time and change are surely best. Brow may wrinkle, hair grow gray. Friendships never know decay. For mid-old friends, tried and true, once more our youth renew. But old friends, alas, may die. New friends must their place supply. Cherish friendships at your breast. New is good, but old is best. Make new friends, but keep the old. Those are silver, these are gold." You know, Solomon put it this way in Ecclesiastes 11:6. "Sow your seed in the morning, and do not be idle in the evening. For you do not know whether morning or evening sowing will succeed, or whether both of them alike will be good." You know, as the years go by, it becomes easier to settle into complacency. Social involvement becomes a little bit more of a chore, doesn't it, than it does something that we enjoy as much as we did when we were younger. Words like, "Let the young people do it," "I've done my part, gave my contribution," begin to creep into our speech. But remember Solomon's prescription that evening sowing is as good as morning sowing. Sowing for friends in the end of life is as important as sowing for friends at the early days of life. And continue to look for those friends. True friends are indispensable. If you have some, rejoice. Rejoice that you're blessed in that way. If you are rich in that. If you don't, you need to get some. Because you need them. Because friends are truly indispensable. Second, true friends are loyal. You know, although the North American Indians had no written vocabulary before the Europeans came, their language was certainly not primitive. Their vocabularies were just as large as the vocabularies of the European languages. And yet our English concept of friend, they didn't really have that word per se. But they had a phrase that became synonymous with that idea. And it was quite eloquently described among some Indians as one who carries my sorrows on his back. That became their idea of friend. Do you have a friend like that? That carries your sorrows on their back. Solomon put it this way: a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born of adversity. How many real friends do you have? Most of us have many acquaintances, but really most of us only have just a few friends, real close friends. We have people that we know, we have people that we associate with, but there is a unique group of people that we're very close to. How can you tell the difference? Well, a real friend ultimately is someone who knows all about you and yet still is your friend. Still loves you. You know, we often stay isolated because we fear that if people really know us at our core, that if they know us, they wouldn't like us. A lot of people have that fear. A lot of people run away from relationships and friendships for that very reason. Acquaintances might be like this, but friends are not. That kind of commitment and loyalty doesn't come easy, and it isn't cheap. When we find it, treat it like gold, because it's precious. A true friend also will confront you when you need it. Times of confrontation are the greatest test of any real friendship. Yet if you have a friend who has the courage to tell you about yourself with your best interest in heart, prize that friend. I want people that will be honest with me and tell me the truth, even if it's not something I necessarily want to hear. Real friends do that. We kind of tease, don't we, about your pants being unzipped or something on your nose, that a real friend will tell you that, right? Won't let you just walk around and let everybody else laugh at you. Told Gail that one day. She told me I need to go wipe my nose. I said, boy, that's a real friend right there. She didn't let me keep going. Well, we joke about that, but there's some truth in it, right? They'll tell you things that others might not. Proverbs 27:6 says, faithful are the wounds of a friend. The wounds of a friend. A true friend is loyal, and he will tell you the truth and confidence with your best interest at heart, even if momentarily what that friend says hurts, because they want the best for you. And folks, sometimes we need to be told things that are going to hurt our feelings if we're ever to be what we need to be. Okay. So what if you lack true friends? What can you do about that? And I want to address that here in this final point. True friends are gained by being friendly. Proverbs 18 and verse 24 says, a man that hath friends must show himself friendly. If a person has no friends, it may not be their fault. The best of friends can suddenly be gone. They can move away. They can leave this life. But when a person goes on through life with no friends, there may come a time when one must consider, am I part of the problem? Is there something that I might need to change in my life to enable me to better have friends around me? Some folks tend to sit around and complain about things, but they do little to change them. Let's not fall into that trap, but instead let's be people that are solution-oriented. It's easy to complain, sit around and gripe, but solutions are hard. We need to be solution-oriented people, because griping never fixes anything. Griping never helps anything. It only creates more problems. But solutions make a difference. As a minister, I occasionally hear a brother or sister say, well, I just don't fit in with the people at the church. Nobody cares about me. I remember a young lady at the first congregation I was at. Her and her husband ended up leaving because they said nobody is real friendly with her. She just doesn't feel like she's accepted. Now I want to give you a conversation that I would have with her on a week-in, week-out basis. Hey, Amy, how are you doing today? Fine. How was your week? Good. Anything going on? No. She did nothing to reciprocate any kind of friendliness. You know, people eventually are just going to stop. Because you almost get the idea that you're bothering her. You almost get the idea that, she doesn't want you to talk to her. And so, you know what? Some people stop. Now, I'm stubborn. I'll just keep coming at you. But other people won't sometimes. So if you do nothing on your side of the equation, no, it's going to be hard sometimes. Friendships are, like any relationship, it's a two-way street. There's things coming from both directions. And if there's not, it's not going to be very good. And so we have to give something to it. Such a one by choice often stays on the outskirts of the group, not participating, not reaching out, not bearing one another's burdens, never keeping up with what is going on in others' lives other than their own. And then they complain because no one cares. Couldn't we say to that person in a very nice and kind way, truthful way, a man that hath friends must show himself friendly. From childhood, Albert Dürer wanted to paint. Finally, he left home to study under an incredible artist. And while there, he met a friend who had similar drive to master painting, and the two became roommates. Albert's friend one day, though, offered, he said, we're neither one getting very far fast because we're having to work to earn a living and learn to do our art as well. He said, I will work and support us. And you work full-time at the art. And Albert said, when I get done, he finally relented on this. He finally gave in and said, okay, we'll do this. But the minute I sell something, I'm going to work and you're going back and you're going to do your art studies too. And so they made this deal to support each other. The day finally came after years of study that Albert sold his first wood carving, and his friend went back to his study of painting, only to find that years of hard labor had so stiffened and twisted his fingers that he could no longer control his hands with any degree of skill. When Albert learned about it, he learned about that tragedy. It filled him with incredible sorrow. And one day when he was returning home unexpectedly, he heard the voice of his friend in the room, and he came in, and his friend had his hands together, those twisted, stiff hands together, praying. And Albert said, "That's what I want to paint. I can immortalize him and his sacrifice for what he did for me by painting those hands in that position of prayer." You've seen those hands. They're in all kinds of reproductions, in all kinds of ways. That's what the original looked like, but you've seen them in different color. And they're simply called the praying hands. And they are the hands of his friend. They gave up everything so that Albert could fulfill his dream. Durer's gratitude for that sacrifice of his friend was captured in that painting. Perhaps those hands, the next time you see them, could serve as a reminder to you of what true friendship really is. It is the indispensable quality of loyalty to someone that is even willing to hurt and be hurt in order to be true. If you have a friend like that, or are a friend like that, then you are truly rich in this life. John 15, in verse 13, Jesus said, "Greater love has no man than this, than to lay down his life for his friends." That is what Jesus did at the cross. He demonstrated his love for his friends as he exhibited the greatest love ever seen in that death there on the cross. And we sing the song, and I hope that you sing it with the spirit and the understanding and with all of your heart. What a friend we have in Jesus. He is indispensable. John chapter 14 and verse 6, Jesus said, "No man comes to the Father except by me." Folks, Jesus is indispensable. You can't do without Him and get to heaven one day. That's a friendship you got to have. He is loyal. He said, "I will never leave you." And He will not ever leave us. Jesus is as loyal comes. And He is the example for each of us. He has earned our friendship by showing Himself a friend. He showed that on the cross. He showed that in providing to us an opportunity to be saved. We know that verse, "Greater love hath no man than this, and to lay down his life for his friends." But the next verse is important too. Verse 14 says, "You are my friends if you do what I command." There's a condition there. If you do what I command you. Folks, obeying Jesus Christ, obeying the words that He has spoken, obeying His will in the gospel, that's how we show our love and our friendship to Him. He also said that same night, "If you love me, you'll keep my commandments." That's how we show it. That's how we're loyal. That's how we demonstrate the friendliness that we want back from Him. This morning, the question for you is, are you a friend of Jesus? Jesus says you are if you keep my commandments. Are you? He wants to be your friend. You're rich if you have friends in this life, people that you can count on, people that you can trust, people that lift you up, people that encourage you, people that are always there for you, people that love you no matter what. If you have those people, you are rich. But folks, all that won't matter one bit if you don't have the one friend that you need, and that's Jesus Christ. Because no earthly friend can do one thing for you in the judgment day. No earthly friend can do one thing to remove a sin from your life. But Jesus can. And He's demonstrated that He wants to, if only we'll let Him. This morning, if you have not obeyed the commandments of Jesus Christ by obeying His gospel, He wants to be your friend. Will you be His? Believe in Him. Repent of a life that has been a life against Him and become a life with Him. Confess Him as the Son of God, worthy of such devotion. Be buried in baptism, having those sins washed away, to get to come home and to walk a new life as a child of God, a friend of Jesus. Maybe you've done that, but you, in some particular way, let your life drift away from the commands that Jesus says you got to keep in order to walk in the light. You know, John says, if you walk in the light as He Himself is in the light, you have fellowship. That's that idea of friendship. That's that idea of walking together. That's what the word means, walking together. We walk together in this life. And I'm walking with Jesus by walking in the light. And it is in that relationship that He says His blood continuously cleanses me of my sins. If you got out of the light, get back in it. 2 verses later, He says that you need to confess your sins and know that He's faithful and just to forgive you. This morning, if that's you, make that right between you and God. If we can help, we want to do so. We can encourage you. If we can put out a hand and lift you up. That's what we're here as a family to do. Hope and pray that you will let us as we stand.